Hello everyone, it's Turin here, and today guys I'm here with another entry in our Community Cast series. In this game we're going to have a matchup between the Dwarves, piloted by Khaleesi, and he's going to be facing off against the Beastmen, who are going to be piloted by Felixander. So guys, we got Cygors, we got Baconators, we got some Slayers. Looks like the makings of a pretty good match. So let's go ahead and slow down here and take a look at the army composition of the Dwarves. So mainly a front line of Dwarf Warriors, which are a decent pick if you're facing off against the Beastmen players using Gores and things like that, and who's trying to use overwhelming numbers on you. But from what I found, at least my competitive build using the Beastmen against the Dwarves, I usually bring Bestigors and Chariots. So Dwarf Warriors will struggle against a Bestigor heavy build, but it looks like the opponent over here did get 2 Cygors. So what that means based on the the very expensive cost of the Cygors is that the rest of his army is indeed going to be like Gores and things like that. So in this situation, the Dwarf Warriors will do pretty well. On top of that, he does have a Runesmith here. He also has a Thane and a Rune Lord. So the Rune Lord is a pretty good pick, and just in most matchups, I would say it's one of the I would say the most competitive pick is probably High King Thorgrim. One of the biggest issues with Dwarf Lords and matchups against Empire and things like that is the fact that they can just get cycle charged and knocked down all day. So the Rune Lord and High King Thorgrim, they can both take the charge. Granted, they'll take a lot of damage, but they can actually retaliate by hitting back and not getting knocked over. So that's very, very helpful. But the Rune Lord with the Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin would be good against like Bestigors or things like that. But I don't know if I would pick the Rune Lord in a Beastman matchup, but still not a bad choice and pretty good. He has some great ability, so you can't really knock him for that. So he does have some miners here for a little bit of AP in the secondary line. He does have the Dragonback Slayers supported by the Althar's Raiders over here. He does have some additional Longbeards in the back line. So he has the Grumbling Guard and 2 groups of Longbeards, so his more elite troops over here. On the far side, he has another group of Dwarf Rangers with a great weapon. So bit of an interesting pick here. The throwing axes won't be bad at all. I mean, just having the armor piercing against like chariots and stuff like that isn't terrible. But still, I'm not a huge fan of Rangers in this matchup. I do think the Althar's Rangers are a very, very kind of staple pick. And I guess they do have stock, right? They both have stock. So stock's going to be pretty nice against the Beastmen. So the Beastmen player is probably going to engage, not really kind of take them into account. And hopefully that'll work out for the mighty Dawi over here. So one more group of Slayers on the far side, and that's pretty much it. So the Beastmen actually had some pretty ridiculous tactics. You can see over here on the far side, they do have 2 Gore Herds kind of Vanguard deployed over here on the forest. So this is a deep, deep Vanguard. On top of that, he does have a Gore Herd over here. He has some Gores with shields, and then he also does have a Bracian with Lord Beast. So he's got like this huge tactical kind of a flanking squad, and it looks like he's going to come up and over the hill and actually do a bit of a rear charge on the Dwarves. So it looks like the Beastman player wants to draw the Dwarves into the valley using the 2 Cygors, and then from there he's going to come up and around with his big goon squad. And it looks like he does have a Morgher over here just getting ready to party. 2 Cygors, and in the back he does have some Baconators. He's got 2 groups of those guys, which honestly I like Chariots quite a bit more, but I guess for their cost they're not terrible. But I don't know, guys, I just can't seem to make them work, and I guess I don't try them enough to do that. But I guess, yeah, you guys have sent some replays with them being pretty effective, so I'll definitely be getting to those, so guys, don't you worry. In the back, 2 more groups of Gore Herds with shields, and the shields aren't a bad variant. Higher melee defense, and the Dwarves do sometimes bring missiles, so it doesn't hurt, but honestly, I think some Bestigors mixed in with some Gores is, a pretty good combination of things. But I definitely think having Bestigors is very helpful for just breaking that Dwarf front line. But I suppose the Cygors have the heavy AP and melee as well, so let's see how they do. So over here you can see the 2 Cygors are just kind of teeing off, just getting their arms warmed up, tossing into the Dwarf lines. But the Dwarves did do a bit of a, I wouldn't call that a spaghetti line. So their troops are pretty bunched here. So if they do take a rock directly to the dome, they're going to take a lot of damage. So as you can see here, that's some pretty heavy casualties, taking those Grumbling Guards down to 66 models. And you can see the Dwarf player immediately reacting, kind of running these guys sideways a little bit. But the 2 Cygors are just going to kind of keep teeing off. Thankfully for the Dwarf player, there is a little bit of a kind of shroud here. And I wonder how much obstruction those boulders would have by the trees. Like, I wonder if they would like actually hit a tree and then not go through. I think I've seen that with like grudge throwers and things like that and bolt throwers, but I wonder how the mechanics would work with the big Cygor boulder. So wow, that's pretty crazy, but look at their, it looked like he was winded for a second when I actually moused over him. So the fatigue going down pretty quick on these Cygors here, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I was wrong, but I think they must tire out pretty quick from throwing those things. So in the front line, you can see the Dwarf Warriors taking a boulder right to the dome, but thankfully, like I mentioned before, they do have the shroud, and it looks to be helping a little bit, although I'll have to do a little bit of testing to really see if that matters. But the Longbeards over here on the far side taking another direct shot. So the Dwarfs are mainly just lining up, but you can see the Beastmen army in Vanguard just kind of waiting in the trees. So he's obviously just going to force the Dwarf player out into the open because he can't afford to sit here. Even though these Cygors aren't the most accurate, over the course of like a relatively long battle, they will do some heavy damage to these Dwarves. You can see they've taken some damage on the Grumbling Guard. These Dwarf Warriors over here have been brought down to 55 models from the starting 75, so that's really, really big. So you can see the Dwarf player is advancing the Rangers, and actually, you know what? Making me eat my words a little bit. I definitely like the Ranger pick, at least against the Cygors, because they can advance on them undetected and start getting some good missile pressure. But you can see the Beastman player is retaliating by bringing the Baconators, and just look how disgusting these things are. But they're just going to run in there, probably run to some of the frontal Dwarf line, and You can see the dwarf player actually very, very well played here. He actually split them into a spaghetti line, and now he's advancing. So I really like that micro from the dwarf player, like having that kind of know how to not push out in that kind of very bunch formation he was in. So he probably stopped in the forest for a moment just to kind of get his bearings, and from there he's going to march out. So the Baconators are going to come in pretty hot, and if the dwarfs are not braced for these guys, it's going to be a little bit rough because I think they have a decent charge bonus. Yeah, 46 isn't terrible, so somewhat equivocal to like low tier cap. But the Baconators do retreat, kind of sensing a little bit of that missile fire there. So the Rangers doing a good job. The Baconators actually have 50 armor, so the armor piercing won't hurt against them. I guess they do have some mitigation, so I guess very thick, disgusting chaos hides over there. So over here in the back, you can see the Beastmen Vanguard army is pushing up and around. Definitely going to do some work on the back line of the Dawi. And over in the forest, he does have a Brave Shaman, so I definitely like this. He's going to like pull him right over here and then like collapse here, and then from the back too. So very, very cool tacticianship from both players. Good micro kind of fanning out his forces, and then very cool strategy from the Beastmen player using the double Cygor action. I remember when Cygors were like, when the Beastmen first came out, remember how like crazy Cygors were against dwarves? I think maybe they like nerfed their accuracy or something, or some aspect of them, but regardless, very, very good damage against these Rangers. Just another great hit right there, doing some serious work. But the dwarf player continuing to advance here. You can see the dwarf warriors forming a bit of a battle line. He's going to probably move up his Rangers and other troops to kind of push these Cygors back. The Slayers will make short work of those Cygors, but you can probably see the Beastmen player is coming down and around, so I think the dwarf player is going to kind of be aware of that very shortly. It's very easy to miss these kind of things because you probably don't expect that, right? But over here you can see the Baconators do kind of charge in here, and like I feel like they don't have the same penetration as Chariots. Like even a very thin dwarf line was able to kind of like stand there and hold, and now they're going to be able to retaliate. So the dwarves probably did take some damage here. I mean, they lost like 3 dwarves, but had that been a chariot, I think it would have like rode through and been really, really devastating. But still, the Baconators didn't take much damage. You can see a Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin going off on those guys, which will do okay damage. It's better against like more like unit dense groups, but also the Rangers with throwing axes getting in there and doing a very, very good job of kind of fending off the Bacon. So also you can see the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass and the Grumbling Guard are coming to support as well. So a pretty even trade for the most part. The dwarf player didn't take too much damage on those dwarf warriors and was able to do some decent HP damage on these Baconators here. Excuse me, did not mean to pause that there. So over here, the dwarf warriors in the front line are advancing, and this is always a tricky situation with the dwarves when you're like under atrocious attack from a multitude of angles. You're like, what do I do? Do I go after these, send some here? Do I stagger some forces over here to deal with the Baconators? So the Beastmen player definitely forcing the dwarf to make some tough decisions here, but I definitely think you need to pressure these Cygors, and Cygors are, yeah, look, they're actually tired already, so their leadership going down pretty, not leadership, but their fatigue. So I guess throwing the boulders and sticking and moving is definitely taking quite a bit out of these guys, but still, they do have 38 move speed right now, so definitely faster than the dwarf warriors who are at 28, but still he is chasing. The Baconators coming in for round 2 over here. They're going to charge into some of these Rangers, which is really bad. So the Rangers actually do get rode through over here, and they probably took quite a bit of shock damage from those Razor Gore herds right there. So yeah, you can see these Ulthar's Raiders here. They do get the Rune Negation to mitigate 22% of the damage, but still, the Razor Gore herds got beaten down. My goodness. So that Thane and these other like dwarf units were able to just wreck those guys. So this seems to be what always happens to me. I just can't quite get them to like do what I want. But I think maybe waiting for the infantry fight before you get too aggressive with these guys might have been a better choice, because I think they took a ton of throwing axes over there. So you can see the dwarves in the front line are kind of pushing in, and they have kind of engaged on some of these gore herds right here. And this will be a good trade because these gore herds have very low AP, and these dwarves are very heavily armored for, you know, their cost, especially the Longbeards. So I think Longbeards and dwarf warriors do they have an equivocal amount of armor? I should probably know this as someone who played a lot of dwarves. So 95, and then the dwarf warriors actually have 85. So, you know, pretty negligible difference for the most part, but still a good trade. You can see the gore herds are starting to get worn down, and the dwarves really haven't taken too much damage. Although over here on the far side, unfortunately, these 2 Cygors are literally just stomping the yard, just beating down these dwarves. So one of the dwarf groups did get isolated by, you know, Morkur and his gore herds, and that'll probably be a little bit of friendly damage right there. So I actually wonder how much damage the friendly attacks do. Like, does that actually do a lot of damage? I don't think it does, but anyways, the 2 Cygors in conjunction with the Gores are able to kind of fend off those dwarf warriors there. So I kind of like this strategy of using the Cygors as your AP and just kind of using Gores as fodder. I thought that was pretty cool. So in the back, you can see the battle is just kind of wild all over the place. There are some Gores in the back line kind of pressuring. So finally, his forces were able to catch up, and these Rangers are very, very exposed right now. Some Miners actually trading pretty evenly with Gores, which is pretty funny. You wouldn't think that would be the case, but it seems to be a somewhat atrocious trade. Although I think the Gores would probably win in just a straight up long fight. The Grumbling Guard, unfortunately, they should be on the front line. That's where you really want them, but they do have to kind of pull in the back here, and they're going to charge into these gore herds head on. And obviously the gore herds are going to lose, but it's still not a cost-effective trade for these Grumbling Guard here. And another group of dwarf warriors are able to intercept those guys. So some of them do slip by and are going after these Rangers right here, but what's going to happen is their AI is going to pull them back because they are caught on the Grumbling Guard. So Over here on the far side, he does have some Dwarf Warriors and Auxiliary that he's probably waiting to keep an eye on things and see what's going on. But these Rangers here are now getting a great angle, and they're actually performing pretty well for how much I was knocking them earlier. But throwing some good some good axes into these Cygors right here. But the Cygors are still, getting some good stomping on. But there's a lot of Slayers in here, guys. You can see there's a ton of Mohawks here, and once those Mohawks are able to get in and like surround some of these Cygors, it's going to be a pretty good trade for the Dwarves. And you can see a lot of the Beastmen infantry here are slowly starting to get beaten back because the Runesmith is now here. He's probably providing pretty substantial buffs. You can see the Master Rune of Negation, a 44% damage resist is so huge. So the Dwarf Warriors have become surprisingly resilient, especially those Longbeards. And you can see the throwing axes. They do get marked by Altar here by that group of Rangers, and he has taken quite a bit of damage, and they are steady. And if I'm not mistaken, exhaustion does affect leadership pretty substantially, so this Cygor is probably not going to fight as long as it normally would. So Morker is in here doing a pretty good job, and unfortunately I think he did get some Chaos Spawn off earlier, did he? Yeah, he got the Chaos Spawn. So the Chaos Spawn over here are kind of helping to fight off some of these, what are these? These are Dragonback Slayers, so definitely not a good trade for the Chaos Spawn. You can see that one taking a little bit of a tumble there, but these Slayers are having a good old time, right in their element, just fighting just big, disgusting monsters. So granted, some of them will get torn apart, but still a good way to get rid of the Chaos Spawn rather than having like Dwarf Warriors trying to deal with them. So you can see Wyson's Wild Farm going, 22% weapon damage and 30 armor, making these Chaos Spawn a little bit more resilient, putting them up to 45. But that one Cygor is routed off, guys, so that was a great situation. Unfortunately, Morker did get his Staff of Ruinous Corruption, so these Chaos Spawn are coming in pretty hot, just going to be chasing down these Rangers. So this is like exactly what you want to be using these Chaos Spawn for. They hit extremely hard against lightly armored targets. I mean, they have such high weapon strength that even against like an armored unit, they'll do some good damage, but this is like where they're really going to thrive. So they're going to tear apart these Rangers, which is going to free up that other Cygor to keep it from getting kind of poked down. And this one should come back, this other Cygor, and start throwing boulders again too. So that's something else the Dwarf player has to be cognizant of. So these Althar's Raiders here are doing their Rangers? Althar's Raiders, yes, got to get that right. They're doing their best to fight, but these Chaos Spawn are definitely going to help put these guys down here. And you can also see the Beastman player does have a Bray Shaman with Beast over here on a Chariot, and I love bringing a Shaman and Beast because Chariots are just so good against the Dwarves. And in the back, you can see there are some Rangers here helping out with the Baconators, and these Dwarf Warriors in the back have done a pretty good job fighting off these Gores, but I wonder if there was any other variables here that kind of led to this fight, or if the Gores actually just beat these Dwarf Warriors. Maybe that was the case. So over here you can see the Runesmith is going to kind of come in and help back these guys up, and he'll definitely turn the tide of this battle. I mean, any heroic unit, even the ones that aren't specifically designed for combat, are going to do pretty well. And it looks like he does get a Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin here, which is just going to tear these guys to shreds. Just a high density unit, that's where the Rune of Wrath and Ruin really shines. So you can see some of these Chaos Spawn coming over here and getting a great rear charge onto these poor Dwarves. So this group is probably going to collapse here, but so are these Gore herds right here. So very, very wild back and forth fight. Like, even after like 8 or 9 minutes of just straight fighting, the balance of power is incredibly even. You can see the Cygor gets a great attack on those Dwarf Warriors, which is very tough. The Grumbling Guard are actually being beaten down by these Gore herds, so definitely they're performing better than I had expected them to. Though they only have 15 kills, so I think a lot of that damage came from exterior sources and things like that. But the Rune Lord here doing a good job with his stand your ground, keeping these Dwarf Warriors fighting as long as possible, and they might actually be able to beat these Chaos Spawn back. So that's not a bad situation at all. Over here, this Bray Shaman got a little bit lackadaisical. He was just kind of sitting here letting this Thane karate kick him. And I haven't seen a Thane in quite some time since the potion nerf, but still, he's going to be able to beat down this Chariot. And the Beastman player definitely needs to pull this guy out, but it looks like he does pull in some reinforcements, which are going to help out quite a bit. But the Chariot is definitely not at home here, just fighting in melee and using his whip. He needs to be charging and running through troops and just getting as much value as he can that way. So there's still 32 Dragonback Slayers over here and another group of 25 Slayers. So quite a bit of healthy Slayers, which are going to be great for like chasing down some of these units. But like I mentioned before, the Cygors are probably going to come back online. This one's at -1 leadership, so it may come back before it fully breaks. And you can see the boulders here are kind of hitting into a lot of these very dense Dwarf forces. But unfortunately, guys, Morker is still in pretty good shape. He's not anywhere near his healing cap, and he most likely still has one more Staff of Ruinous Corruption, or at least one more Spirit Essence of Chaos, which is really dangerous with these two very, very low health groups of Slayers. You can see with the Lower Beast, he actually does summon a Manticore right here. So the Manticore jumps in and gets some good damage on the back of these Slayers. Probably kills quite a few of them, but it is degenerating as it is a summon unit, so it'll kill itself eventually. And it looks like he might have accidentally used a Rune of Wrath and Ruin, or maybe he was just kind of at this point like, I just need to do as much as I can to this thing. So the Dragback Slayers have turned, and they're going to be fighting this Manticore, and they're going to annihilate this thing. Like, these guys are just the creme de la creme of anti-large against light armored large. So you can see this thing's down to about 1700 HP, and even though it's actually doing a lot of damage though, that Manticore, it's killed about 9 or 10 of those guys there. So in the back, you can see these Slayers are just kind of swarming on Morker. They are going to be intercepted by some Gore herds, and the Gores will trade pretty well with the Slayers. Slayers, you don't want them fighting things like Goblins and Gores and all these type of fodder units. units, but still they're just trying to get that Cygor off the battlefield, which is definitely a good call. But you can see the AI just keeps tugging them back in the battle, which is really, really unfortunate. Thankfully for the Dwarf player, that other Cygor did indeed shatter. But if you guys take an overarching look at the battlefield, you can see the Dwarves actually have kind of unified. The Dwarf warriors here are being led by this Runesmith, and they're going to be doing a pretty good job, but unfortunately a Baconator is coming back in here, and he does get a little bit of a charge, but it looks like the pathing got screwed up a little bit, but he does get in there and do some work. But I think these Dwarf warriors should be able to kind of fend this guy off, or excuse me, these Longbeards. So there are some Chaos Spawn, another group of Chaos Spawn. The balance of power was about 60% in the Dwarf's favor, and then those Chaos Spawn came in, and that immediately changed things. It's pretty crazy how much that like affects the balance of power. So you can see this Chaos Spawn, oh man, just like how gnarly that thing is with its little like stunted horn right there. So these Dwarfs are definitely going to be pretty good at fighting off these Chaos Spawn, but still they are monstrous units. They do have over 100 weapon strength, if I'm not mistaken. Looks like 138 right now. 62 melee attack is quite high. Oh, they actually do have the Weisson's Wild Form. I was looking at their stats, like, that doesn't look right, but they do have some pretty heavy buffs from the Lower Beasts, it looks like. Lower Beast, Lower Wild, I always get those two confused. But over here, the Runesmith is fighting off some of these Gores. This is just a close fight. You can see this Runesmith coming in here as well. Hopefully he can do his thing. And it looks like Morker is starting to run out of steam. He should be getting close to his healing cap pretty soon, but he does have a Cygor coming back. So the Cygor still does have some ammunition. So if I were the Beastmen player, I would definitely keep it and throw some boulders, because this thing is so low. If it takes any melee contact, it's probably going to rout off pretty quick. And guys, another group of Chaos Spawn comes in. So just all this like kind of fourth quarter power coming in from Worker, which is pretty much always the case with the Beastmen. And the Dwarves are starting to rout off, which is so incredibly tough. So right now, basically what needs to happen is the Dwarves just need to hold. They're going to take a beating here. They're going to start losing. But if they can hold a little bit longer, these Chaos Spawn will go back to the warp and will degenerate, which is exactly what he needs. So you can see they're getting torn to pieces right here. He does have some Slayers over here, which is definitely a saving grace, having a group of Slayers here and these Longbeards with very, very good leadership. And also he does have a Thane. So the Thane's not in bad shape. And he's putting a little bit of a beating on Morker, which is very, very good. You do need that DPS, because Morker, even though he only has 15 armor, is incredibly hard to kill without regeneration. And over here you can see the Slayers and the Runesmith are getting in here, and they're going to kind of try and put this giant down. So they're doing their best, guys. Oh, there's the wrong camera angle. So yeah, they're getting in there on him, and they should be able to kill this thing with their anti-large bonus, because I think with their anti-large, they're upwards around like 70 weapon strength when you take that into account. So he's getting a little bit of stomping. He actually stomps the head off that Dragonback Slayer there, which is very, very tough, but he's going to go down here, and down he goes. So the Cygor hath fallen. Those Slayers definitely doing a very, very good job, guys. So over here, the Slayers are going to return to the battle, all 9 of them, but still, that's a big deal. And the Rune Lord is doing a great job just tanking all these Chaos Spawn. But guys, there's a bunch of Gore Herds coming back. There's actually 61 here. The Dwarf player just has the Rune Lord. Let's see what he actually has left. So he has the Rune Lord, he has the Thane and a Runesmith, 9 Slayers, and he also does have some Dwarf Warriors back here, guys. So it is looking very, very bare bones for the Dwarf player here, but you can see another Rune of Wrath and Ruin, and the Chaos Spawn are slowly starting to degenerate, and the Dwarven leadership and their heroic units are just fighting to the last here, just doing the best they can. You can see a Weisson's Wild Form going off, buffing all of these troops, so both players just desperately trying to take the game from one another, which is all the burst damage they can. But this Rune Lord right now is 150 armor. This Thane also has 210 armor right now. Just these Dwarves. I think the Slayers probably even have a ton of armor too from all these buffs, so let's actually see. So the Dragonback Slayers, can we get a look at them right now? I think oh, did they just get killed? I think they just got killed off right when I was going to take a look at them, so very, very unfortunate stuff. But the Dwarven leadership is holding and standing firm. These Chaos Spawn are slowly starting to degenerate down to 7 models. This other group of Chaos Spawn, I think they're completely out of the picture. Yeah, it looks like they're completely gone. And Morker took so much damage from the Dwarven leadership in there. The Thanes and the Runesmiths and the Slayers just laid a beating on him. So I think all these Gores without the support of Morker are probably going to rout off here. And you can see the balance of power is very, very good. This Rune Lord is just chasing Morker down. He definitely needs to take him out, because Morker has about half of his health left to heal. So Morker is going to need to run and try and regroup here. You can see the Dwarf Warriors being beaten down over here, but the Thane and this Runesmith here are going to be able to finish off these Gores. So what a great fight by both players. Just really fun tactics, just wild unit choices, double Cygor, you get Baconators, you get all kinds of wild, fun stuff going on here. So the Morker is running into the trees. He is using his healing. He's at about 700 HP, and his healing cap will probably get him up to around 1400, give or take, before he kind of caps out. But guys, I think he is out of Chaos Spawn, and he's not going to have enough health to deal with all these units. I mean, the Thane, even though it's pretty tattered, Morker doesn't have the heaviest AP himself. So especially when a Rune Lord and a Thane fighting hand in hand against him, it's gonna be really, really tough for Morker to finish him off. So the Thane in here is just beating down these Gores, just for the ancestors here, doing his thing. Let's see. He definitely needs to get a jump kick to kind of seal things. But the Rune Lord coming in the back is going to trigger that rear charge penalty hit from these guys, and it's pretty much going to be game over for those Gores. So right now it's pretty much just Morker lurking in the shadows with his 800 HP. And some of the Dwarf troops actually are coming back from deep route over there. You can see some Dwarf Warriors coming back. So let's go ahead and fast forward a little bit, because I know there was a little bit of Benny Hilling going on here. So Morker unfortunately does assassinate that Runesmith. He then engages with the Thane, but the Rune Lord and the Thane are able to tag team and take him down. So what a great fight by Khaleesi and Felixander. That was super fun. Interesting builds for sure. I like the Rangers. Like, they seem to do pretty well against the Baconators and, putting some pressure. I mean, I think that, Althar's Raiders are pretty much an auto-include in most Dwarf builds, if not all. But the Rangers with great weapons is more so what I was, like, a little bit kind of curious about. But on that same note, if you did bring Bestigors, which, I would usually bring, they would have been, pretty darn good at getting through the armor. So definitely, when I looked at it in kind of hindsight there, that makes sense. So very, very cool stuff from Khaleesi and Felixander as well. I really like the tactics of, like, drawing him into the open, attacking with the Baconators, and doing that big, like, fun rear charge with the vanguarded Gore herds. So again, well played to both players. Hope you guys enjoyed that community casting, guys. I got a lot of fun content coming soon. Going to be doing some modded videos with Khorne vs. Slaanesh, although it might be up by the time this gets posted. We're not sure yet. So guys, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned, and more content coming soon.